Hey everyone, so I'm just popping on before the video starts to let you know that this video that I'm posting today was actually pre-filmed in October 2020 and I just decided not to post it. I can't even remember why I decided not to post it, I just didn't. But in my last Q&A, so January 2021, a lot of you guys wanted a video about the misrepresentation of witchcraft within ghost hunting TV shows. And as it turned out, I'd already filmed the video months ago and just didn't post it. So today I'm posting the video that I filmed back in October. So the lighting is different, the audio is different, my hair is different, and the background is different. The quality is just not quite as good, but we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming of up-to-date filmed videos as of next week. So I just wanted to let you know, because I get a lot of questions about why the background has changed, why my hair is a different colour. That is why. It's because I filmed it before Halloween and then just never posted it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video and I will let past me continue on with the rest of the content for today. Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the misrepresentation of witchcraft in ghost hunting TV shows. Now I want to start this off by saying I actually really love ghost hunting TV shows. Ever since I was a kid, every Thursday night, me and my dad would sit in the living room eating our evening meal in the dark with the curtains closed, watching Most Haunted, which is a British ghost hunting TV show that's been going on for years, and I absolutely love it, to the point where I still continue this into my adult life. If there is a new ghost hunting TV show, you know I gotta be watching it. But over the years, I have noticed that a lot of these TV shows actually severely misrepresent witchcraft. So before we get started, I do just want to say that this is not about one particular TV show. This is about lots and lots of different TV shows. There's now hundreds, if not thousands, of ghost hunting TV shows that all follow a similar technique, and a lot of them do very much blame witchcraft and use a lot of witchcraft misinformation in order to amp up the ambience of the TV show. Now, the second thing is that I am aware that these TV shows are not designed to be documentaries. However, for the layman who maybe doesn't know anything about witchcraft, when you have historians talking about the history of the property, ghost experts talking about spirit interactions, and then you have people that are also talking about witchcraft, it can be really difficult to identify who actually knows what they're talking about and is spreading factual information, and who is using witchcraft to amp up the ambience and make it spookier for the audience that's watching. So I know that was a lot of disclaimers there, but the real importance behind this is that hopefully when you leave this video, if you don't know anything about witchcraft beforehand, you will be able to look at the things that they say regarding witchcraft in a different light, and maybe leave this video having a little bit more understanding of the history of witchcraft and the way it was used. And then when you do watch these TV shows, you don't necessarily believe everything these people are saying in regards to magical practice. Okay, I'm going to stop with the disclaimers now. Let's get into the video. When you start watching several of these TV shows, you often find a pattern forming. The hosts will often utilize witchcraft, spiritualism, and occultism in order to give a reason for why the house, the mansion, the prison, whatever it might be, is haunted. Now, usually they work on the principle that ritual sacrifice was carried out, or black magic witches were here, usually relating it to several graffiti tags or items that were maybe found on the property, without having any real understanding of what those items mean or what any of the symbols mean. And at the end of it, they'll often blame cultists and ritualists and people doing spell work and witches for the house being haunted, because it gives a reason for the house being haunted. And often they have no real basis for why they believe that witchcraft caused it. It's more just a scapegoat. They use it as a way of making the TV show seem more spooky and creepy, and ooh, witches live among us, when in reality, witches have lived among us for tens of thousands of years and you probably never noticed. Why? Because witches aren't like they are portrayed in these ghost hunting TV shows. They're not like they're portrayed in scary movies, books, or creepypastas. And that's really the information that I want to share today. So there are two main routes that they take during these ghost hunting TV shows. The first is that they utilize historic evidence as proof that witchcraft occurred in the house in order to give a reason why it may or may not be haunted. So one of the main things that they will do is they will acknowledge whether someone in the house was once an occultist or a spiritualist. Now, especially during the Victorian era, so many people were obsessed with occultism and were obsessed with spiritualism. It was the big craze of the time, and people were fascinated with spirits. They were fascinated with the idea of being actively in a room with an apparition right in front of them. The other is the idea of occultism. Now, I think it's really important to note here that neither occultism or spiritualism are the same as witchcraft. You can be an occultist and practice witchcraft. You can be a spiritualist and practice witchcraft, but you don't have to be, and they are not the same thing. And that's what a lot of these TV shows don't seem to realize. Now, oftentimes you will find that any house that was owned by an occultist or a spiritualist is immediately going to be haunted because of seances and rituals. Now, this is something that you see a lot, and although it can happen that during seances, someone might not shut down that working so that spirits can continue to come into that space, and maybe they can't leave again. And yes, it is true that some occultists did go on to practice witchcraft. I think it's really, really important to note that spiritualism and occultism are not witchcraft. They are separate. Now, of course, some people may well have been spiritualists and witches. Some people may well have been occultists and witches. But to be a spiritualist did not make you a witch, and vice versa. They are separate things. Now, a lot of the time you will hear them talking about how they did spiritualist meetings or occultist meetings, and they had seances in this room with loads of candles and the lights down, and that's the reason why it's haunted. Now, there's one thing that you should probably know about the spiritualist movement that happened. A lot of the people that were practicing spiritualism weren't actually working with spirits. It's shocking, I know. It's something that people don't seem to realize. The spiritualist movement made a lot of people a lot of money. There was so much popularity in the idea of seeing spirits, capturing them on camera, being in the room and seeing a physical presence appear, being able to see and talk to loved ones who had passed on. But a lot of the people that were actively practicing spiritualism and made themselves very known for practicing spiritualism actually weren't interacting with spirits. A lot of them were charlatans. They were people that were wanting to get a lot of money out of people that were very desperate to see deceased loved ones, family members, friends, or simply to have the experience of a lifetime. A lot of these shows and seances by the famous spiritualists of the time were well known after the fact for being very, very good at deceit. They often had cabinets that had empty sides. They utilized the atmosphere of the place. They really tried their best to convince people that what they were seeing was really a spirit, when in reality, it was anything but. And a lot of these shows that do go to houses of famous spiritualists to do ghost hunting, they don't seem to realize that more likely than not, the most famous spiritualists weren't actual spiritualists. They were charlatans. Now, of course, that's not saying that all spiritualists during this time were fake, not at all. But a lot of those that put themselves in the media, a lot of those that did interviews and that were in newspapers, they were doing it to gain money, to sell tickets to their shows, to get more people to talk about them. So it's really important to note that if they mention spiritualism and occultism, and then they immediately go to rituals and witchcraft, they aren't the same thing. They never have been the same thing, and they never will be the same thing. They are three very different things that, yes, they can be used together. It's important to note that they aren't necessarily going to be. Now, the other historic fact that they will often use, this is used in Europe and in North America, is the idea that an individual that lived in the house or an individual that lived in the village or town was tried or accused of practicing witchcraft. Now, the witch trials and the witch hunts happened earlier in Europe than they did in North America. But you'll often find that this is majorly used as a reason why that space is haunted. Either the witch was casting curses and hexes on the family that owned a house, or maybe they embedded something in the walls that meant spirits were trapped there forever. They often include very elaborate ideas that surround the person that was tried for witchcraft. Now, when you actually look into the witch trials, it is a very, very sad time in history around the world. And it's really important to note that witch trials still exist. In the Western world, we are lucky enough to not have that happen anymore. That's why I can talk to you on here without living in fear. But in lots of areas of the world, witch trials still happen. And a lot of the time, they go the same way as the trials that happened in Europe and in North America. Now, most of the people that were tried as witches or accused of being witches weren't actual witches. During this time, there was a lot of political and religious upset. People were very much divided. The old ways were still present, and yet new religions were coming in, and they really wanted to erase older traditions. And so fear-mongering began, a lot of fear-mongering. Now, the way the witch trials went in different countries does vary drastically, but you often find that the people that were accused, sometimes tried, and sometimes killed for being witches likely had nothing to do with witchcraft at all. They were either men and women that held political power or property. They often held political beliefs that were different to what the community currently held, and so often, in order to get rid of them and give a lot of the time that property back to men if it was owned by women, they would try these people for being witches. And it was essentially a scapegoat, an easy way out. If you didn't have a reason to put them in prison, try them for witches. It's fine, go for it. This was a time of great unrest within communities. People were blaming each other left, right, and centre for things that were completely natural. A cow dying, a terrible summer, a winter that killed lots and lots of people, a disease. These things that were completely natural were being blamed on individuals that had nothing to do with it. And the other reason a lot of people were tried for witchcraft was that they were outsiders. They were either spinsters, maybe they didn't have any children, maybe they were widowed. They lived in the liminal places of society, the very edges of communities. They were often elderly and were often considered not necessary anymore, especially for women. And although it wasn't solely women that were tried for witchcraft, it was men as well. You do often find that these people were used as scapegoats for things that weren't their fault, that could never have been their fault. So the idea that these ghost shows use that these witches that were tried for witchcraft did some kind of black magic on the family, and that's why they were tried for witchcraft, and that's why the house is haunted, really doesn't stand up when you actually look into the history of witch trials. It doesn't work, because the people that were tried for witchcraft 9 times out of 10 had nothing to do with witchcraft. They were just innocent people that were wrongly tried so that the village, the town, the city could use them as a way out, a quick way out so they didn't have to address the larger problems like disease or famine or political and religious unrest. So they are the two historic ways that they use witches, occultism, and spiritualism to prove the fact that the house is haunted due to ritual. Now, the other things that they use, which is the second section of the video, is they will use artifacts, whether they be things that have been found, locations in the house that have strange patterns, burn marks, symbols, things that prove that witchcraft was and is practiced in that area. Now, this is one thing that you see a lot, especially on the American ghost shows. It's not something you see in quite the same way in European TV shows, and that's largely probably because a lot of European ghost hunting TV shows go to very, very old buildings. You often find they will go to castles that were built in the 11th century. They will go to monasteries built in 1250. They will go to castles that are 500-600 years old. And this isn't the same over in North America. Most big buildings in North America were built around the same period after the colonization from Europe to the New World. So you often find that the witch hysteria in America was very much happening at the time these buildings were being built. And so witchcraft and the ghost hunting TV shows in America are almost embedded with each other. They can't escape. Whereas in Europe, you often find that witchcraft isn't brought up in these TV shows quite as much, maybe because in Europe there isn't the same fear of witches as there still is in North America, and also a lot of the properties were built far, far before any witch hysteria happened, when witchcraft was just a standard, everyday, normal part of life. People didn't fear it, people weren't worried about it necessarily in the way that they were, say, during the witch trial period. Often when these ghost shows go into a property, They're going to be looking for anything that seems out of the ordinary. That might be chairs stacking on top of one another. That might be names written on walls, or they might take EMF meters in and spirit boxes in order to communicate with spirits. They might have a thermometer in there to check temperatures changing and get voices through a spirit box. But the other thing that they'll look out for are weird patches on the floor, weirdly, and symbols drawn on the walls, and they will equate these to being witchcraft a lot of the times. I've seen a few do this and it is cringy. The one that you see a lot is that they will find a piece of graffiti on the wall that they describe as being a pentagram. Now, I want to say that this isn't actually a pentagram. Often what they are seeing are pentacles. Now, a pentacle is a 5-pointed star within a circle. A pentagram is what you see up here. And they'll start talking about how teenagers sneak into the property in order to conduct satanic rituals and practice witchcraft in the rooms. And it really isn't the case. The pentacle is a tag that's used by graffiti artists almost everywhere. Just in my local town, there are pentacles just really scruffily sprayed on everything from post boxes to shop fronts. It just seems like an edgy symbol that teenagers use when they're tagging buildings with graffiti. Same as you often see 666 drawn on buildings, or Satan often spelt really, really wrong. The idea that this symbol is somehow immediately connected with Satanism and witchcraft isn't accurate, especially when a lot of graffiti artists aren't interested in witchcraft and they're usually just using these symbols to tag an area for one reason or another. The other is the idea that the pentacle and pentagram are somehow evil symbols. This also isn't true. The pentacle and the pentagram have actually been used by many different cultures and religions throughout the last several hundred years. For a period of time, the Christian church also used the pentacle as a religious symbol. So the idea that it is solely connected to evil black magic really isn't true and is largely a misconception that's spread by modern media. It represents unity, balance, and is often used as a symbol for protection by actual witchcraft practitioners. Yes, of course there are going to be some people that use the pentacle for negative intention, usually spreading misinformation, or as a cult symbol, which I want to be very clear here. Witchcraft and cults, not the same thing, exceptionally different. So I always find it quite funny when they go into an area, say a corridor, and they see a pentacle graffitied on the wall, and immediately they start freaking out because witchcraft must have been practiced here. When I can almost guarantee you, no one is going into that abandoned ass building in order to practice witchcraft. Why would we? We have our own living room, we have our garden, we have our local woods and meadows, we have groups and areas that we can meet up in. Why would we go to an abandoned building to put ourselves at risk just so we can practice witchcraft in a dirty old fire hazard building? We wouldn't. Oftentimes the people that are going into these buildings are people that enjoy looking at old buildings. They enjoy going in and seeing the atmosphere of a building that's decaying or a really old building. Or they are people going in to tag the walls with graffiti with no other intention than to be a bit annoying. They aren't actual witches in most cases. Of course, I'm sure there are some graffiti artists that are witches, but I highly doubt they're going to be doing this damage to really old historic buildings. It's not something you really see very often. Another thing that you'll see is any dark patch on the floor, they will equate to a ritual fire, or they'll equate to a witch sacrifice. Both of these things are thoroughly inaccurate and actually quite comical. I was watching a TV show not too long ago actually, where this group of people went into a basement and they saw a black mark on the floor and they immediately proclaimed that this is where witches had a fire. I'm going to say that again for you guys, hopefully you'll know what's wrong with this. That witches had a fire inside a basement of an old house that was made of wood. Can anyone see the comedy value in that? A lot of the times they will be saying that this dark mark was due to human sacrifice or ritual burning, there was a ritual fire, and I can tell you that they aren't true either. Although ritual sacrifice did take place in a lot of different cultures throughout the world, and in some areas it does still take place in certain religions and cultures, within witchcraft, most people have no need for sacrifice of any kind. People at most might sacrifice energy, and time. They aren't sacrificing people, they aren't sacrificing babies, and they aren't sacrificing animals. Now, although some cultures do still have sacrifice of animals for their traditional magical practice, in the Western world, where most of these TV shows are filmed, there are so many ways of working with energy, interacting with spirits, and I want to make that really, really clear here. This is something that we have not been able to shake for centuries. And actually, witches often have a very close connection to animals and would never want to hurt an animal. They won't even kill wasps or spiders or anything of the sort because they don't want to bring harm to an animal. Back to the idea of fires, I find this really quite comical. Witches do have bonfires and do work with the element of fire, but we don't put ourselves at risk in order to do it. So the idea of lighting a fire in the basement of a poorly ventilated building that is made almost entirely of wood is very comical to me because one, if you light a fire indoors, you might end up with carbon monoxide poisoning. You might even die of carbon monoxide poisoning or smoke inhalation, or you might set fire to, I don't know, the entire building because it's made of wood. If witches were ever going to have a large open fire, they're going to do it in a safe, outdoor location that's well ventilated, where they aren't at risk of setting fire to property and items and objects. They're not going to put themselves at risk. A lot of the time they'll refer to these fires as Sabbath fires. Now this largely comes out of a Christianized twisting of pre-Christian stories of witchcraft. Within Celtic regions, a lot of people will celebrate the fire festivals. These are things like Beltane and Samhain, where they might have a bonfire where they are burning petitions and incense, and there's a gathering of witches and practitioners, sometimes just pagans, gathering together just to enjoy themselves, drink a bit of mead, enjoy the bonfire, and just dance and sing. And this has often been twisted into the idea of the witches' Sabbath, where witches would dance and meet with the devil. Which doesn't happen, by the way. Most witches don't even believe in the devil existing. So if you don't believe in the devil existing, why would you work with them? This is largely Christianized twisting of original stories, and unfortunately a lot of the people that do these TV shows don't actually look into the pre-Christian beliefs and instead focus on the Christianized writings of witchcraft. So if you want history on witchcraft, please don't go to a source that was written in the Middle Ages by Christians who wanted to wipe out paganism. That is not where you're going to get accurate information. Instead, go to historians, read books that are written by pagans, by witches, by Wiccans, for people that are interested in learning the actual practice rather than the altered practice that has been done in a lot of religions outside of paganism in order to really scare people away from witchcraft. So if witches were to go and have a fire, even if it was to happen, they aren't going to put themselves at risk of dying or severe injury by having a ritualistic fire inside. Witches are not stupid. A lot of people have this misconception that witches don't understand science, that witches don't believe in modern medicine. We do. We definitely do. And if anything, a lot of the witches that were present during these times in history when these houses were being built, they were the midwives, they were the people that the poor folk went to when they needed medical treatment because doctors were exceptionally expensive. And actually, especially during certain times in history, you were probably at more risk of dying if you went to a doctor because their medication was poisonous, toxic, or could lead to even worse illnesses and ailments. So a lot of people would go to the local wise person to gain poultices, to gain herbal medicines in order to get better if they couldn't afford to go to a proper medicinal doctor. So the idea that witches are somehow stupid during this time period is not really fair because a lot of people actually went to witches and wise folk to cure illnesses, and they actually had a good understanding of midwifery, of childbirth, pregnancy, all this kind of stuff that you often see being overlooked. Now, the other thing that you will often find in these TV shows is that a historian will bring out an item that was found in the house. So So this happens on, say, shows that are related to objects being haunted in the house. It also relates to just standard ghost hunting TV shows. You'll often find that the historian talks about how they found a horse's head in the barn, or they found animal bones buried underneath the entrance of the house. They'll find bottles buried in the walls, paper charms sealed in wax. They'll find all this odd stuff, and the historian just mentions it. They're just like, oh yeah, we found this. But then you often find that the people that are doing the TV show, they elaborate it into meaning that a curse has been placed on this building and all the people inside were cursed to die horrible deaths. But actually, it's really important that we look back at the history of witchcraft in these areas. Nowadays, most people see normal life and witchcraft as being very, very separate. So if you were to go into your home, knock out a wall, and behind the plaster you find an animal skull with writing on it, you might really, really freak out, because that is a modern home and you were not expecting to find that. And what does this mean? Panic, panic, panic. Whereas often during the 15th, 16th, 17th, even into the 18th century, you find that witchcraft, magic, and everyday life were one and the same. Every year, every day, people would go to the local wise person, whether that be a wise woman or a wise man, whoever it might be, that practiced witchcraft in that village. You often would find that every single village would have its own, at least one witch, wise person, whatever they would be referred to as, that would help everyday people in their everyday lives. If someone needed a charm for fertility because they were struggling to get pregnant, if someone needed to know whether or not their baby was a boy or a girl, they wanted the weather to be in their favour, they wanted their child to be successful, they wanted to earn a little bit more money in their business, they wanted better health, you know where they would go? They would go to the local wise person. And actually it was a daily occurrence. Everyday people, even though these people might have considered themselves good Christian folk, they may well have still gone to the local wise person because it wasn't considered as being odd. It was a normal part of day-to-day life. So you will often find within historic records that mares' heads or female horse heads were placed in barns to bring fertility to the animals that resided within them, because the female horse was a symbol of fertility. You will often find that horse bones, especially female horse bones, were used in properties where people wanted to conceive a child because symbol of fertility. Certain animal bones, even human bones and teeth, were used for certain charms and items that would help bring people good luck, good fortune, or protection. You often find that burying something underneath the entrance of a building would imbue the entire house and everyone that lived in it with whatever it is that the person asked for, whether that be good health, longevity, fertility, abundance, happiness, love. You often find things buried in walls, found in furniture. Things were really commonly found in everyday life. And it's only now that we might freak out at the idea of seeing a cat skull in a wall. This was just modern aspects of life for the people that lived within this time period where witchcraft really was normal. Magic was everywhere. People feared fairies and spirits. They were worried that their children were switched out for changelings, and they would always go to the wise person within that village to check whether or not they had an illness, to find out the sex of their baby, to do workings for protections of crops and cattle, to make sure that they had a successful year, to make sure that their newborn child had blessings. These were normal things. So I always find it quite weird when you watch a TV show and say they knocked out a wall in an old building when they were turning it into a museum, and they found a bottle sealed with a bunch of stuff in it in the wall. They immediately freak out and think that it's black magic. Now, often the witches and wise folk, they weren't light workers like you see being really popular today. Today you have a lot of people referring to themselves as light workers. These are people that only do good, only practice good magic. During this time period, people were all-rounders. They could curse and they could cure. Magic is an energy. It's just neutral energy. You can do good with it, you can do bad with it. Just as electricity can kill and can help. It can be used in an electric chair, it can be used in a ventilator. It entirely depends on how you use it. So a lot of the time when they pull things out of the walls and they're like, oh, this must be black magic to curse the entire family, it likely wasn't negative magic at all. If it was put in a wall, usually by the people that were building their own houses, this was likely a blessing of some kind. It could have been a protection charm to protect the family from harm. So it's really important that when in these TV shows you hear them talking about things being found in walls, or even worse, you find that families are talking about how when they took up the floor they found animal bones underneath. This was really, really common, and the people often did it themselves. They weren't bad people that did it. They were often people that went to a local wise person and that was what was given to them in order to heal a certain ailment or in order to achieve something within their life. Now, does that necessarily mean that it worked? Definitely not. We don't know the success rate of these witches and wise folk, though people did keep going back. And it wasn't until the witch trials began and the real fear-mongering surrounding witchcraft started that people really began to push away from witchcraft, and you found that witches were no longer found in every village, or if they were found, they weren't advertising their presence or their wares the same as they maybe were, 50 or 100 years beforehand. So the big thing to take out of all of this is that it's really important when thinking about witchcraft that we don't separate it from day-to-day life. Often nowadays, if someone were to find something odd sitting on their front step, we would freak out about it. Whereas 300, 400 years ago, it was probably just someone leaving something there. It could be to harm, it could be to help. You would talk to your neighbours, figure out what it was, go to the wise person, see if they could figure out what it was. It was a part of everyday life that magic was real and that witches and wise folk were just as professional as doctors. And if anything, they were more accessible to people than doctors because they weren't charging humongous rates for their work. If anything, there was a bartering system. You gave them something, they gave you something. It wasn't always money that was exchanged, and it was a real part of everyday normal life for the normal people that lived in these normal regions around this normal world. It's not something as abnormal to these people as it would be to you. Or I suppose not necessarily me, because I am part of it, but to you or to some other normal-ish person that doesn't involve themselves in these kind of things, it might be considered really, really weird today. It's also important to note that a lot of these TV shows will discuss the Christianized perspective of witchcraft, which isn't accurate. When Christianization occurred across the world, they would often alter pre-Christian beliefs, pagan rituals, holidays, celebrations, even pagan deities were warped and twisted into becoming evil entities, when they never were to the people that actually followed them. Pre-Christian practices were warped into being something evil. Symbols were altered to become horrible. And it really brought a lot of fear to the Christian people that really truly believed that this is what pre-Christians, pagans, or witches actually practiced and believed in. So it's important that when you go into all this, most of the information that they're talking about is from Christian books, Christian myths, Christian theories that isn't actually what was practiced. And a lot of the time they don't have enough information on the subject to really know what it is. So if they're talking about Satanists, I can guarantee you it's not what you think. Satanism is one of the biggest things that gets warped by modern media. So it's really important, if you do want to do research on Satanism and on witchcraft, that you don't necessarily go to a Christian source of information. Now, this is not me hating on Christians in the slightest, not at all. If you are Christian and I am pagan, I don't care. If you don't hurt someone and I don't hurt someone, believe whatever the hell you want. But you do find that a lot of Christian texts have altered what actually happens in these religions and practices. So if you do want to learn about it, it's best to avoid those kind of texts and instead look at information that's been created by the people that actually follow the traditions, the people that are part of it, because they are going to have a better understanding of what it all means than the people that were outside of it, pushing against it to get away from it. So when it comes to these TV shows, enjoy them. Enjoy them for what they are. They're entertainment. I know I certainly will. I will continue to watch Most Haunted. It's still one of my favourite TV shows. I will continue to watch Haunted Artifacts or whatever it's called. I will continue to watch Ghost Adventurers and whatever other ghostly TV show that I find on Netflix or the TV or Amazon Prime or YouTube. I might have a little bit of a problem when it comes to ghost shows. I might love them a little too much. But when it comes to witchcraft, occultism, spiritualism, black magic and all of this stuff, it's really important to take it with a grain of salt, because although to a standard everyday person, it might not matter if what they're saying is real or fake, in certain areas of the world, in certain parts of Europe, in certain parts of North America, witchcraft hating still happens. People are persecuted for it, people are fired if they are found out that they are witches, they get hate mail, they will literally get letters through their front door damning them to hell because their community has found out that they practice witchcraft. And these TV shows, although they definitely don't intend to do harm, if the people that watch them don't know anything about witchcraft and don't want to do any research into it, they might take everything that is said as being fact, and it can really put people in harm's way. So if you see anything about witchcraft in these ghost TV shows, please double check the facts, understand what it is that they're talking about, and don't necessarily take it all at face value. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I am gonna go and watch some more haunted documentaries because I do be loving me some ghost hunting documentaries. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. It really, really means so much to me. I would love to know what the worst piece of witchcraft information you've ever heard in a ghost hunting TV show was. Please let me know down in the comment section. For me, it was when one show went into the basement of a wooden building, as I mentioned earlier, and they thought this dark patch on the floor was a fire, like a bonfire, and that people were actually risking their lives to have a bonfire in a basement of a wooden building. I just found that one so funny, and I know it shouldn't be funny, but it kind of is. So I'd love to know, what is the worst thing about witchcraft you've ever seen mentioned in a ghost hunting TV show? I would love to know. If you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every single week. I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you have a marvelous magical day. If you want to chat more about this, about your ghostly encounters, we have a Discord server down in the description box. And I want to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Your names will be on the screen at the end of this video. So I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope you're having a marvelous magical day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!